Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to our members, and thank you for joining us today for this CESA Practice Notes webinar. The practice notes for today's webinar is in draft, and a number will be allocated once it is published. But the topic is an introduction to artificial intelligence, AI, in the consulting engineering sector. My name is Oliver Rowe, and for those who don't know me, I am new to CESA, having joined the management team in January 2025, filling the large shoes that Wally Main left after retiring. I am occupying the position of Contractual Affairs Manager at CESA, amongst other things, and will be your facilitator for today's webinar. What are the CESA Practice Notes? In short, the CESA Practice Notes are a practical resource that helps consulting engineers in South Africa operate efficiently, ethically, and in line with industry's best practices. They are designed to improve the overall quality and consistency of work within the profession and to protect both the engineer and their clients. To access the CESA Practice Notes, please go to our website, www.cesa.co.za, and under the Guidelines tab, you will find the Practice Notes. This is a service for our members, and as such, they can only be accessed by our member firms. If you are from a member firm and would like access to the Practice Notes, please contact Gillian, who will be happy to assist you. You can contact her at gillian@cesa.co.za, and I will place this into the chat during the course of this webinar. A bit about the history of the CESA Practice Notes. They began in 1962 as advisory notes, with a name change in 2012 to Practice Notes. Over the years, they have been updated and added to, where we now have over 100 such notes. The practice notes are categorized into 6 specific areas, that of client and appointments, construction stage services, good business practice, legal responsibility disputes, professional conduct and development, and quality and risk management. If while reading these practice notes you feel that they may need to be updated due to industry changes, please don't hesitate to email me, oliver@cesa.co.za, and I will get our professional team to have a look and review the practice notes. Some house rules before we introduce today's speaker. Please can I request that any questions be posted in the Q&A icon found at the bottom of your screen, and any comments be placed into the chat. Depending on the time, we may open the discussion to the floor to share on how AI has benefited you in your work environment. We will allow both speakers to speak and then go to questions. And so now let me take this opportunity to welcome our guest speakers for today's webinar. Our first speaker will be Charles Cilliers. Charles is a professional civil engineer and technical director at member firm Jones & Wagner. With 20 years of consulting experience, he has served on the CESA Quality, Risk and Sustainability Committee for over 5 years and has recently become interested in the impact that AI is having on the consulting industry. Our second speaker is Sam Varela. Sam Varela serves as a principal legal risk advisor at Aon South Africa, holding an LLB degree and admitted attorney and associate member of ISA, that's the Insurance Institute of South Africa. Her interests lie in risk management within the professional indemnity sector, particularly concerning the built environment and the medical malpractice law area. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Charles to start our webinar this afternoon. All over to you, Charles. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Oliver. So today I'm going to be presenting on the use of AI in the engineering consulting industry. I've got a couple of disclaimers up front. The first disclaimer is that AI was used in the production of this presentation, obviously, because that's what I'm presenting on. And we're actually going to be using AI in my webinar. And I'm hoping that you guys listening will have your AI software open and will be trying things as I'm going along. So that's something exciting to try, and we'll see how that goes. My second disclaimer is that I'm by no means an AI expert. I'm qualified by enthusiasm, and I hope that my enthusiasm comes through, and that this is very much going to be a AI 101 But hopefully there'll be something that even the seasoned AI users will learn. Yeah, okay, so let's start off with the contents of my presentation. So I'm going to run quickly through a brief history of AI, and then I'll talk about the different types of models that you get. I'll touch on some really important aspects because that's why we're here. There's very important things that everyone must be aware of when using AI. I'll talk about some of the cool uses you can do, and then we'll do a how-to and run through an example. And then I'll touch on the ethics of using AI, and we'll talk about the risks, but I won't get too deep into that because Sam's following me from the Aon point of view. And then I'll talk about some resources, and then I'll end off with some conclusions. So before I start, I just wanted to say that AI is currently very topical in South Africa. There's articles every day, like up to 10, and there's tons and tons of things to read. Just here, I included 2 screen grabs just to keep things interesting. First one, how South Africans are actually using artificial intelligence. And it's starting to enter people's everyday lives. So that was a really interesting article to read. And the second one, AI systems are great at tests, but how do they perform in real life? So there's tons of interesting articles out there, and you can see that these were dated 23 and 24 August, so this is already old. But yeah, I'll talk about some topical things as we're going through the presentation. Okay, so let's start off with a definition and a history. So first of all, the Oxford Dictionary defines artificial intelligence as the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. So we'll touch on each of those as I go through my webinar. So let's start. In the 1950s, Alan Turing proposed that machines could think, and artificial intelligence was coined for the first time at the Dartmouth conference in 1956. Back then, I think AI was, in its early stages, and it was very much based on rules and logic at the time. And that's basically what AI, was based on in the first few decades. So we went from this early concept of, machines can think, and Alan Turing developed this test called the Turing test, which basically, if you have an AI and a human responding to questions, and you can't distinguish between the responses, we say AI has finally passed the test. So that's been the test for AI since the 50s. And yeah, AI has grown and grown and grown. In the 60s and the 70s, these early AI programs were basically, using the rules and logic to do basic things like, play chess games and that sort of thing. It built up into the 80s when, these systems were then starting to be used in the finance and the medical industries. But I think because they were based on rules and logic, the enthusiasm, I think, started to dwindle a bit, and the 80s is actually referred to as the AI winter. But then came the 90s and the 2000s, and in that part of our history, data started accumulating, and machine learning started taking over, and AI started developing much better because of all the data that was available to learn from. In that period, for the first time, IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov at chess. He was the world champion at chess at the stage, and he was beaten for the first time, and this was a big milestone. And then, machine learning developed further, and we're now from the 2010s to now, we've developed into these large neural networks. The Turing test was passed for the first time in 2014, I believe. In 2016, Google's AlphaGo beats Lee Sedol at Go, which is a much more complicated game than chess. And look at the body language there, guys. Like, being beaten by a machine. And that's how far we've come from those first days when Adam first proposed this idea. And so we get to now. This is the cover of Time's 100 most influential people in AI. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Professor Benjamin Rosman at WITS. He runs the MIND Institute, where MIND stands for Machine Intelligence and Neural Discovery. His team's just recently gotten $1 million investment from Google to continue their AI works. And it's just great to show that, Africa's on this platform as well. And if there are any very difficult questions after this webinar, we're going to pose them to Professor Rosman. There's the link if you'd like to follow that and read that article. Very interesting. Okay, let's talk about some important aspects. The first one I wanted to talk about is hallucination. So all these aspects are very important to understand, keep in the back of your mind whenever you're using AI. And the first one, I just wanted to talk about hallucination. I've got this example here, which is a joke, but it shows a good point. So it starts off with a very poor prompt. Was 1995 30 years ago? And AI's response was, no, 1995 was not 30 years ago. If today is July 25th, 2025, then 30 years ago would be 1995. So yes, 1995 was 30 years ago. So what is the answer? And the thing is about how AI works is it bases its answer on the most probable answer. So, how it functions is it essentially, from big data, it develops its response based on the probability of that response. And there's a good chance that some errors might creep into the response. So that's referred to as hallucination in the AI sort of world. And it's really important to review your output. And I think I'm going to drone on about that. And by the end of this webinar, it's going to be deeply ingrained. But you have to review, and I'll talk about that a bit more just now. Then my second point is prompting. As I said, this joke, it started off with a very poor prompt. There's actually an art to prompting. There's some things that you must include each time you prompt, and I'm going to talk about those. But at this beginning part, I'd just like to talk about manners. Research has found, and there's actually papers that back this up, that if you say yes and thank you and please to your AI when you're prompting, you actually get a better response. So from now on, when you prompt, you refer to, when you start your prompt, you say, please assist and thank you in advance. Okay, the third bullet there is biased. As you said, that the AI is developing its response from all the data that's available on the internet. That includes YouTube, that includes other social media, and we're all aware of how much bias can be on those platforms. So just beware when you're reviewing your output to make sure that you're not including any bias in your work. And then connectors. This is just something interesting that's available at the moment. You can actually connect your AI software to other software on your computer, and you can use the AI to use your software. So what we've been doing is using AI to search our SharePoint, which then really helps when you're trying to find information, because it takes that information from various places in your project history. Agentic AI, that's when AI serves as an agent. So you give it a detailed task. It essentially goes away. I'm not sure where, but it goes away and it opens up some software and it does some stuff, and then it comes back and it gives you your answer. So that's a very brief description. And then second last bullet, copyright. It's really important to know, and I'm sure everyone's aware of this, but for those that aren't, that if you're using the free version of any AI software, whatever you place into that AI software could be used for AI learning. So if you're putting your client's confidential information in there, then you might be at risk at exposing that information. it is really important to know what the sharing options are for that software. And most likely you're going to have to you get a license for a paid version where they confirm that they're not learning from your data. So please keep that in mind. And then human in the loop, which is last on my list, but certainly not least. In fact, probably the most important. And I've heard it been referred to as the 20-60-20% rule. The humans involved right at the beginning, right? They draw up this really good prompt, then AI goes away and does 60% of the work, and then they come back. And then you are still required to review that. I talked about hallucination. We're looking for errors and anything that might not be incorrect. And you can't just take that output and put it in your deliverable and send it off. That is asking for or taking on a lot of risk. Let's leave it at that at this point. Moving on. Okay, types of AI. So most common AI I've listed on the left here. ChatGPT by OpenAI. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but there's different models that you can use on ChatGPT. There's model 4, 4.5, and 5, and that's only a few. There's tons of other models on ChatGPT. Copilot by Microsoft, Gemini by Google, and Claude by Anthropic. Gemini's top model is the 2.5 Pro, and Claude's top model is the Opus 4.1. But there are tons and tons and tons of AI. I mean, just look at this image that I've got on the right here, and this I think was dated from February, and I don't think by any means complete as a list, but it just shows you how many of these AI models there are. Just a note at the bottom here, GPT, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So that's my little thing for those who have known everything up to now. Okay, but how do you know which model to use? Which is the best at the moment? Luckily, there's a website called lmarena.ai, and that has a leaderboard on it, which tells you which is the top AI to use as voted by users at that exact moment. So when I was creating this presentation, at that stage, it was Gemini, which was first amongst equals because there's a couple of ones here, GPT-5 and Claude all sitting at 1. So that's a really useful place to go and see if you're not sure which one to use. But in terms of which AIs are being used, there was this poster created by Visual Capitalist, which just shows how ChatGPT is overwhelmingly being used as the AI of choice, followed by DeepSeek, slightly smaller, and then some of the other ones I've mentioned, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, two tiny ones, Meta, Mistral, and obviously ones that aren't even being used or too small to show up on this image. But yeah, that's a useful place to go and see which one you should use if you haven't decided which your favorite one is. Let's talk about some uses. I'm not going to go through this complete list because we can be here all day doing that. And I'm keen to do that if anyone wants to stay on. But I think for now, let's just start with a few. So searching the web, that's quite obvious. Instead of, like the olden days, which isn't that far away, but, you used to open up Google and search for something and you'd get 20 pages and you'd have to look through those 20 pages to find your answer. So now, using your preferred AI software, you type your question and it does the work, it searches everything and it gives you the response. I see now Google is automatically providing AI responses when you search, as well as giving the pages. But yeah, very much this is a very popular use case at this stage. Next one is generate text, which we're going to do just now. But I just wanted to say, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the person said that he uses AI to answer all his emails. I mean, obviously, he reviews the email, the text that's been generated, maybe changes a few things and sends it off. But could you imagine if you save yourself 10% on reading your email? I mean, how much more emails you'll get through? Your inbox won't get as cluttered as mine currently is. So that's a great use case. And then visualization. And here I'm going to go through an example. So let's get this up. First of all, let's start with the prompt. Okay, we're going to remember the few things I've started with on what you should include in a good prompt. Hi, ChatGPT. I'm busy building a presentation about using AI in the engineering consulting industry. I would like you to create a cool image in blue tones to show the uses that I will list below that I can use to show how AI can be used to generate images. Can you assist with that? I would like it to look professional because this presentation is really important for my career. The words are, and I've just listed everything that I've got on the slide. And let's see what AI gives us. Boom, and it probably took about 6 minutes or so to generate this, but isn't that impressive? I just want to put my laser on. AI clearly thinks data analysis is really, really important, right? Because it included it twice, data analysis and data analysis. And then another question I have for you guys is, who's used AI to do some gooding? I mean, I don't even know what that is. I think it's meant to be coding, but coding is already here. So I've kept this in the presentation because I just wanted to show you that, AI does make mistakes. So please check your stuff. And if that isn't enough of a message, ChatGPT itself says it at the bottom here, ChatGPT can make mistakes, as evidently shown. And then second here, OpenAI doesn't use Jones and Wagner workspace data to train its models. Whew, that's a relief. Okay, let's ask AI now to repair this image and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so now all the correct things are on. But to me, the AI has not changed the image again. So that's what it does. Every time you prompt it, it's going to give you a response. It's going to try to fix what it's already done, but it's going to go through that whole probabilistic exercise again of creating what you want. And now they've changed the image. And to me, this grasped a lot more of the AI essence than this one does. So just be expected that when you're asked something to correct, it's not going to keep everything the same, look for what you're asked to correct, and then just correct that. It's going to redo the whole thing for you. And then before I carry on in my presentation, I just wanted to talk about devil's advocate. So what's a real cool use of AI, especially if you are already using AI, is to take the output of one AI and put it into another AI and ask it to check for you, especially if maybe you think there might be some hallucination in the text, but you're not quite sure. Then that AI can act as a devil's advocate and could check everything and make sure that it's good. You can also ask it to review work that you've already done and just ask for what some suggestions on how it could make it better. So I won't go through the rest of these. If you're interested, there's a breakdown of each of these in the practice note, which will be published shortly. I think we're going to move on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what you need to have in a prompt. But I'm also going to try this interesting exercise. And the whole point of this is to try and get those guys that haven't started using AI because they're not quite sure how to go about doing it to actually give it a try. So I'm challenging all of those guys who might not yet have used AI or are not quite comfortable or would just like to try this to open up the AI software, and we're going to see if we can get this going. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so what we're going to do is because regularly consultants need to do site inspections, right? And you're forever taking photos, and you typically have to go back and put those photos into some sort of inspection report and write up on what you saw on your site inspection. Well, I think one of the interesting use cases of using AI is to do this use AI while you're on the site inspection. Have your software running, load the photos directly into AI, and then keep it tracking as you go. And then we're going to prompt it like we're going to prompt now. So I'm going to, first of all, screen grab this image, which is my selected site. So then let's hope this does work. Is it going to... Okay, open up. Hopefully you guys can all see ChatGPT on my computer. Let's load the images. Okay, the image is loaded and we're ready. I'm just dragging this over a little bit because I need to see my prompts for my prompts. Okay, now one thing that you guys have to know is that ChatGPT, for example, and the other AI softwares are large language models, right? So we're going to use language to prompt. You can type it in. It might make sense while I'm talking to type it in. But if you're trying this for yourself or you're going to try it afterwards, try talking into AI, because it's a language model. Will get a lot more from whatever you say. When you talk, you tend to use a lot more words than when you type, and every word it gets is going to help it to create a good response for you. So here we go. Starting the dictation. Hi, ChatGPT. I'm currently on a site inspection in Limpopo on 11th September 2025. And I'm walking around the client's site, and the specific task of today is to do a safety inspection. And I was walking along and I saw the stretch of road, and it really struck me as a safety hazard. So I'm going to need to include this in my report, and I would like your assistant to generate some text. I'd like the tone of the text to be formal, and I would like you to act in the role as a consulting civil engineer. The audience of the report will be the client, and I'd like you to return back in terms of a structure. I'd like you to highlight 3 issues, and then in a table at the end, provide 3 quick wins and 3 long-term solutions. Now, this inspection is really, really important for my career. If I don't do a good job, I might get fired. Please make sure that whatever you do, be sure about the text that you provide. And lastly, whichever 3 issues you highlight, please tell me why you highlighted those. It's really important for me to understand why you picked those out. Thank you very much in advance, and please go for it. Okay, so if you guys are still seeing what I'm seeing, it's busy thinking. What it's doing is it's changing the dictation into text. Okay, so this is one of the things that, the definition of AI brought up, which is just basically, picking up voice and changing it into text. So yeah, you can see we've done that, and I'm assuming it's all right. I'm not going to go through it, but let's click on this and let's see what comes up. So that took about a few minutes, not even maybe a minute. Here's a structured draft for your safety inspection report. Safety inspection observations, roadside hazard, Limpopo site. During the site inspection conducted on 11 September 2025, a section of the roadside adjacent to the client's premises was assessed for safety risks. The following issues were identified as critical to both the motorist and pedestrian safety. Do not worry, I'm not going to read all the text. I'm just going to pull out important bits. So key safety issues identified. Inadequate road shoulder width. The unpaved shoulder is narrow, uneven, and not adequately compacted. This presents risks to vehicles attempting emergency stops or breakdowns, as they may not have sufficient space to move safely off the carriageway. I'm going to move on. Reason for highlighting. This is a direct hazard to motorists, particularly heavy vehicles, and is a common cause of roadside accidents in rural areas. Number 2, Insufficient hazard warning measures. The only warning device observed was a single reflective triangle. Let me just move that there. You can see it there. Placed close to the road edge. This is inadequate as per standard safety practices. The reason for highlighting this is lack of proper warning measures, increased the likelihood of rear-end collisions, particularly in low visibility conditions. And then, number 3, steep and unprotected drainage edge. The drainage channel immediately adjacent to the shoulder is steep and unprotected, and the reason for highlighting this is it poses a severe crash risk for errant vehicles and increases the potential severity of accidents. Recommendations. Here's our quick wins. Place additional warning triangles at recommended distances, 45 meters, 100 meters, etc. from the hazard. Number 2, install temporary reflective delineators along the drainage edge. And number 3, conduct regular checks to ensure hazard signs and triangles are deployed correctly. Long-term solutions. Widen and properly compact the shoulder to provide a safe refuge area. Construct a formal roadside drainage system with safer slopes and culverts, and install guardrails or crash barriers, etc. And then there's a summary, and then it asks if you like more, and so on and so forth. So you can see, if you took 10 photos and each of those photos identified 3 things, and, this generated the text, usually it might take you a couple of hours to do this at the office the next day. Now, it takes a few minutes, and, obviously you have to read through it and you have to generate text. You have to add engineering perspective, but the bulk of the work, that 60%, is now done for you. And perhaps maybe there's some things that maybe you wouldn't have picked up, and has given you some food for thought. So I just wanted to show you that this is the use of AI in something that we all typically do. Okay, let's make that disappear for now. Just importantly, this isn't a site photo. It's one of my photos. It was taken on the side of the road for insurance purposes, because when I was driving from site, I edged off the road and this ripped my tires due to the poor compaction. So if this inspection had been done and the road had been corrected, I wouldn't have lost my tires. So just a note. But let's carry on. Okay, let's talk about ethics. Okay, transparency. It is advised that you be transparent about the use of your AI in your work. I think there's nothing worse than not being told that there's AI generated text, and then reading a report and finding a section which is so clearly generated by AI that it might be disappointing to the client. So it's better to say upfront, have a clause that says our company uses AI to generate text or whatever, and everything that's output by AI is reviewed and approved by engineers or whatever at the company. So be transparent about your use of AI. Review, I've already harped on about it, but it's really important from an ethical point of view. We are engineers, we are the protectors of society, and we need to continue that role. If you take outputs of AI and you plug it straight into your deliverable and something wrong happens, then from an ethical point of view, you're going to have to respond to that. I'm not going to touch on more than that, because that's Sam's section, and she's going to talk about that. Professionalism. We all did tertiary education, engineering qualifications. We're all professionals. We try and highlight or lift the industry to be as professional as it can be, with the help of bodies like CESA. And we really need to maintain that level of professionalism. So it's really important that before you use the output of your AI, that it's checked, but also that it fits in with the rest of your deliverable in terms of tone and structure, and you obtain the level of quality, which is my next point, that you were achieving before you started using AI, because that's what we want to do, right? We want you to use AI as a tool to enhance and not to reduce the quality of our deliverables. Just before I touch on policy, I've got this image here, which I got from LinkedIn, which I thought was quite interesting. ChatGPT does not equal JBCC advice, but that JBCC could be anything. It could be FIDIC, it could be NEC3, it could be, medical advice, whatever. There are professional people that are going to help you, and you can't completely rely on AI where previously you would have relied on a professional to advise you. Yes, you can ask ChatGPT and you can get a good feeling for what clauses or whatever. But I mean, if you completely rely on that, there's a good chance that you might, use an error in that advice, and then that could lead to some risks. So just be cautious. There's so much that ChatGPT can do. We don't have to rely on completely for professional advice. And then policy. It's important for companies to have a policy, an AI policy, because that's going to inform staff what they can and cannot do. I am very confident that your staff are using AI, even if you don't have an AI policy. And it might be a good idea to decide on what AI staff should use, especially at their work and especially using client information. So a little bit of advice from that point of view. Okay, risks. Like I said before, AI bases its answer on the most probable or plausible answer, and that's not necessarily the fact or the truth. It's just, the truth is technically the most plausible answer, but it doesn't always get there. So you need to be aware of the risk of just completely relying on ChatGPT. Data protection and information security, I've talked about that, but it's highlighted here again as a risk. Over-reliance. I've got this image here from TED Talks. There's a whole bunch of TED Talks. They've even got a specific AI section. But this one was specifically talking to, can we use AI without losing ourselves? And that very much talks to over-reliance. And I feel a bit hypocritical here because I can't get anywhere without my GPS on my cell phone. But we don't want to get to a point where we completely rely on AI to do our work. We need to be able to retain those skills. And that talks to the next point as well, the skills gap. There's a major concern of the risk of the new generations of engineers coming in and being completely reliant on AI and not developing that ability to review the output of AI, which maybe more seasoned engineers have because they themselves did that work and therefore could pick up when things go wrong. So I suppose these are risks more facing our industry than facing ourselves as engineers. But we just need to keep note that we need to be aware of becoming over-reliant and generating a skills gap. And then lack of transparency. And here, I mean something different to being transparent about the use of AI. I'm talking about not understanding from the prompt to the answer what the AI did. It's fine if you're asking the AI to do something which you could have done yourself, but it's going to do it much quicker, to doing something which you don't completely understand, and it doesn't tell you how it did it, and it just gives you the answer and you use the answer. The risk there is that you've actually got an error and you're given wrong results. So that's a major risk, and it's much better if you don't understand what the AI is doing, you prompt again and say, thank you for the answer, but can you please just take me through it step by step and break down each point so that I can understand. And from there, it provides you a learning opportunity to understand and to grow. And then perhaps maybe the next time you ask it, it's not necessary because you're then aware of what it's doing and you're aware of the type of answer you should be expecting. Okay, going on to resources. LinkedIn is a very valuable resource to me. There's tons of posts, how to prompt better, and links to where you can go to get training. So it's really good to look out on LinkedIn for AI stuff. I also found this really cool podcast called the AI Cookbook. This is by Malcolm Wuchota, who was actually a consultant who came and consulted to J&W about our AI use. And I think most of his stuff is in his podcasts, which are free. So I advise you to go there and listen to him and learn from him. Very valuable source there. And he's a consultant as well, which is my third point. And then recently I attended a webinar which was actually linked to CESA, where Dr. Craig Wing was given the webinar, and he is an AI friendly, and he's written a book which is really interesting. He has this analogy for AI use versus the weather, and how you go from an AI winter to an AI spring, and new ideas come through. It's really, really interesting, and books are still there, and they're still valuable resources. So I advise you to pick up this one if you can, if you're interested. Just the last point there on this slide. AI is constantly evolving. Every week there's something new. I've already talked about the news articles, but it's essential to keep training, because there's new things all the time, and every time you partake in training, you're going to learn something more, and it's going to help. It's going to give links to other things, and before you know it, you're going to get better and better and better at using AI. Okay, this is my last slide. Just going to run through some conclusions, some takeaway points. If you remember one or two of these, I think this whole webinar will be worth it. Number one, always review all AI output. Don't take that risk on, Number two, always ensure data privacy is in place. You can use free AI software to, search the web and do personal stuff, and it's really interesting and useful, but don't put your client confidential information into a free AI. That's asking for data privacy issues. And then number three, sometimes there is more convenience to print, to type your prompt, especially in open plan offices. We can't all be talking to our computers, but just give it a try. It feels really natural. And like I said earlier, you use a lot more words when you talk, and it uses all of that. It absorbs it in, and it gives you a really good response. Constantly seek new training. I've talked about that, but it's still a takeaway point. You see AI training, you grab it, especially if it's for free from a CESA point of view. And then number five, use AI. And that sounds ridiculous, but I know, like, some people are given a free license to use AI and they don't use it. And to me, they're missing out the opportunity to have a tool that can make them so much more efficient. So just use it. The more you use it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, and the more it's going to become a useful tool. And then lastly, and I hope we get an opportunity to do this, and the platform allows it, is to share what works and what doesn't work. You say, oh man, I used AI. I was in this meeting, and I didn't take my notes, and I've just got like these 10 thoughts, and let me just quickly scribble them into AI and get a cohesive sort of summary of the meeting. And then somebody goes, oh, I've left my notepad, but wait, somebody said you can just use AI. And then, before you know it, we're all learning from each other. And then also what doesn't work. I've got some really interesting, funny things that I can share if there's time afterwards. But, you learn also from things that don't work. So that's my last point. I'm going to then end it there.
Thanks, Charles. Thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah, so very interesting things, and I certainly have learned a lot in what you presented. So thank you for that. Charles, there was a question that popped up, and I see there's another question that's just arrived as well. But maybe I can just ask you from your perspective. Vickers Smith posted something. He says, "Have you heard about the AI watermark?"
I haven't heard about that, but it sounds like a really interesting aspect. I think, if we do get a chance to open up the floor, maybe you can tell us about it. But from what I would think it would maybe be something that shows where AI was used, and a sort of a mark to indicate AI created content. So if we do open up, maybe Mark, you can come in and just tell us more about it. But that sounds really interesting.
So I just did a quick jump on the internet. I didn't use AI for it. I just actually typed in to my standard Google, and it comes up and it says, yeah, AI watermark is the process of embedding a recognizable unique signal into the output of an artificial intelligent model, such as a text or an image, to identify the content as AI generated. And I think that's certainly a very valuable thing. It's sometimes we especially when we look at videos that are posted now on social media, you question, is it an AI generated video, or is it actually the truth? So I can definitely see the benefit of having something like that.
Good afternoon to all of our listeners, and thank you so much for that insightful presentation, Charles. It really was, such a great insight into the use of AI, especially in our industry. But you did definitely make it a little bit of a tough act to follow. I am conscious of time constraints, so I am going to jump straight into our agenda. This session, I'm going to discuss the following pertinent topics. The themes discussed today are really going to tie in with our overall concept of risk management, which is really my absolute passion and honestly the heart of what we do at Aon in the legal risk management team. Today we're going to unpack some of what we call the misunderstood concept of negligence. And I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on what we call the duty of care, the onerous duty of care that's owed by professionals in our industry. And then we're going to dive right in and look at that from a risk management perspective. So what can we do as an industry, as professionals, to sort of mitigate and manage that risk? Okay, so let's look at unpacking the basis of negligence. So I'm going to jump right into discussing what we know as the standard of care that's expected from a professional. And essentially, that is where there is a duty and an onerous obligation being placed on professionals around what we call the duty of care that's owed. Now, that isn't only to paying clients, but it's also to our colleagues on site. It is also to the innocent bystanders on site or the third parties that could suffer as a result of one's negligence or of a professional's negligence should they cause a claim. And I like to call that the community at large. Essentially, we really have to consider what the standard of care being required of the professional is. And ultimately, that really is going to be measured against an expert in a similar position with a similar set of skills or qualifications. The question that is asked there is, what would somebody in that position have done? What did their conduct fall short of? What did they do wrong? And how was that then being managed? And how is that then being compared to a professional in a similar position? We don't quite yet have a test case in the design space of AI gone bad. But we know that the situation is being monitored with a close eye, especially from insurers. Those questions are being asked as to how that will then develop and unfold in the future going forward. I want to spend a little bit of time or a little bit more time on what we know as the duty of care. And I really just can't stress enough the onerous obligations that's placed on professionals around the standard of care that is expected of them. And just to reiterate what I said on the previous slide, that the test or the tests employed by a judge or a magistrate or an arbitrator is now no longer what we know as the reasonable person test, but it goes that step further and becomes what we know as the reasonable expert test, with that higher standard of care then being expected. So what does that really mean for a professional or an engineer in a similar situation? Well, you're probably asking, how does that tie in with the concept of the use of AI? Essentially, my point here is, if one negligently applies AI-generated materials, the question of due skill, care, and diligence must be asked. Were measures in place to mitigate the risk? Was there some form of vetting and assessing of the output that was being, given to the client? And just to reiterate that, if one holds themselves out to be an expert, if one calls himself an expert in any given field, and a court or an arbitrator finds that their conduct or their output, it was reasonable for a professional to have relied on that output, or a third party, a client or a third party, then that professional will be considered to be a responsible party. And a responsible party carries the weight of that duty of care that we spoke about. Now, I don't want to get too carried away with my passion, which is the philosophy of law, but I do want to spend a couple of minutes unpacking the legal elements of what I call this often misunderstood concept of negligence. And the reason I place so much effort or emphasis on the concept of negligence is really that is the test and the trigger on the professional indemnity policy. So in order for the policy to be triggered and essentially then to respond to a claim for damages or for losses, negligence has to be proven. We have to prove that a professional owed a duty of care, and then it must, on top of that, be proven that there was a breach of that duty owed with what we call proximate cause or causation. So there's a link between the act of the professional or the engineer and an omission or an omission. And that is then what we say elicited by that breach of the duty of care. So in essence, by failing to act or by acting in a negligent way with a duty of care owed, that then resulted in damages or losses being suffered. So all of those elements essentially have to be proven in order for negligence, to be established, and then for the policy obviously to be triggered based off of that negligence. So let's speak a little bit more about what that duty of care encompasses. And ultimately, the onus lies with the insured to ensure accuracy with the results that's being generated from that AI tool. An AI tool does not exonerate the insured or the professional from the following critical duties. That I call them critical duties. And this list isn't exhaustive and it's not all encompassing. So these are just some of the things I think need to be considered from the professional, is that when you're using AI responsibly, you must ensure that the client's instructions are being met, that you present a design that meets the client's specification, and consider the risks involved with specific design, and then advise your client accordingly or in line with that. Also, just to ensure that the necessary approvals are being obtained and met if they are required. And then we must also consider regulatory aspects and compliance. And I want to spend a little bit of time speaking about that. We must always ask the question when we're doing a design, what does statute say to us about this? And what is the regulations regulating this work? There are many pieces of legislation that are applicable to an engineer or to a designer or anyone on site. And I'll just name a few. Again, this is not an all-exhaustive list. It's not all the regulations that are applicable, but when I'm doing a design, and are putting out content that's generated from AI, has that artificial intelligence model considered the Occupational Health and Safety Act relevant in South Africa? Has it considered, for example, the National Building Regulations or the Engineering Professions Act, etc.? And has it taken that into account, and what has it done to incorporate that in the design? Is everything being put out in compliance with that? And ultimately, that responsibility is going to sit with the professional who's signing off on that design. It is not going to be an excuse or an accepted excuse, I believe, in court to say, well, I used AI to generate an answer, but AI forgot to incorporate the Occupational Health and Safety Act in my response, and that's why my design was lacking in that area. So, that ultimate responsibility and sign-off sits with the professional. And, when I was asked to put this presentation together, I had some questions in my mind around what has to be considered when we are talking about using an AI-generated model to come up with professional output. And my questions were, if a client mandates and pays for a professional or an expert service, they are essentially expecting the engineer or the professional to deliver on that expert service. So my question there is, if we are placing heavy reliance on AI, can the client then not argue that they are entitled to pay a lower fee, seeing the engineer or the professional they're not doing all of the work, they're doing some of the work? If an expert is really selling their service and they are contributing their expert services, which would include their intellectual property, what element of that design purely belongs to them, and what element of that design is being replaced by a machine? AI is essentially designed to be used as a tool to enhance or improve efficacy. For me, and I believe for the rest of the industry, it's not there to replace those services entirely. The quality of the output is only as good as the correctness of the data being put in. And I think Charles spoke about that in quite detail, that quality in, quality out. The AI-generated tool can only use what you are giving it. And yes, it is capable of making mistakes, but we also can't forget that, humans are also capable of making mistakes. As machines make mistakes, so do human beings. And that is the requirement and the need. I can't stress enough the need for having quality checks in place, checks and balances in place to ensure that what's being put out as a final product has been checked and verified. Yes, there are technical mishaps that might happen, and there are technical failures that might happen. And I think Charles demonstrated that very well with that video that he did. Yes, the machines do make mistakes, but we can't take away from the fact that human beings make mistakes too. So I believe on both sides, there needs to be some stringent vetting and checking in place to deal with that. Okay. So on my next slide, I just want to spend a little bit of time on the use of AI from a risk management perspective. And yes, I did say earlier on that we might not necessarily have a test case for AI gone bad in the built environment space. But, and I say this as a big but, there is case law that exists in my world, the legal fraternity. And I want to share a case with you, that went to court, and this was decided in a court of law. And we see outcomes from this case. And essentially what happened in this Mavundla case is that the party's attorney tried to rely on case law that was generated from an AI tool. We believe it was generated, the court believed it was generated from an AI tool. And I just want to read a quote to you from the outcome of the case. And one of the judges said, in my view, relying on AI technologies when doing legal research is irresponsible and downright unprofessional, clearly indicating the court's disapproval in the use of AI when conducting legal research. And you might ask why this is important or why this is relevant for us. But essentially in South African law, case law is binding. It sets a binding precedent on our lower courts. under what we know as the doctrine of precedent, which really requires courts to follow the decision of higher courts within that judicial hierarchy to ensure what we call legal certainty and predictability. We cannot hide away from the fact that there is some form of responsibility on all professionals, whether you are using an AI-generated tool or not. But I think once you are employing those models and those mechanisms to improve your efficiency as a business, and to improve your output and to improve your services that you're delivering to a client in the most time-effective way, you have to have that vetting process in place. Risks are always going to be inherent in the use of AI, and it really does create what we call this vast opportunity to amplify one's research abilities and drafting skills. But it has to absolutely be done safely, and one must always go back and verify those sources. A suggestion could be that processes are to be developed for AI-generated work, but really to be vetted by senior members or professionals of any business. Risk mitigation for AI is really best achieved by having what we like to call a collaborative engagement between both humans and AI, as opposed to AI doing all of the work with no oversight. And just to conclude that section of the talk, we really do believe that AI won't necessarily replace people in the workforce. And I don't think that is the intention of AI. I think AI is there to improve efficacy and to assist people in better doing their jobs. So the intention is not to replace people in the workforce, but it may very well replace people who don't know how to work with AI. And I think essentially that's what's so important in the message today, is that everything has to be vetted and verified, as you would do with or without the use of AI. Designs have to be checked, and they have to be verified, and they have to be signed off on by a responsible party. So even if we are using a tool, we have to then go through that process. And I just want to share a quote with you from Mr. Juming Lau, who is an expert in artificial intelligence and social responsibility with machine learning and big data. And his research really pushes back on the idea that AI is going to replace human workers, and instead suggests that the technology may improve employee performance. And again, it is there to assist and better those who are doing the best they can to give their best output. And that's all she wrote. That's all from me. I know we're going to spend some time now with Q&A, which is my favorite part. So I'm going to hand over back to Oliver. And if there are any questions you'd like to take up with me afterwards and hear more about my services or more about what we do at Aon, please reach out to us. We'll send out an email after the webinar that you can respond to, and my contact details will be there.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate your time and your effort. Thank you very much for the presentation. And Charles, likewise from your side. So there have been a couple of questions, not as many as I would have hoped. But please, guys, those of you that are online, please feel free to continue posting. I am looking at both the webinar chat, where some people have put a question in there, as well as the Q&A, and so we'll be referring to both. But Charles, here's one for you, which I think is probably a nice one to start with, and certainly a question that I have. What are the gains or otherwise of using paid AI as opposed to free AI, other than confidentiality?
Well, I think the two things that comes to mind, and I've been working on a paid license for a while now, so I'm not quite sure if the free ones offer this service, but I think on the paid service, basically all your work or engagement with AI is kept in your history, so you can always bring it back up and start the conversation again and pick it up where you left off, and carry on. So I know that ChatGPT's got this project function where you can open up a project and you can keep all project related information together. Also not sure if that's in the free version or not, but That's one of the things. But I think one of the main things as well, and it unfortunately links back to the confidentiality, but it's slightly different, is that you have an option to create a library where you can upload up to, I think, 20 documents, and that allows you to search those 20 documents, and so for instance, you could upload all your environmental legislation, and then if you're looking for a specific part of legislation, you can just do a quick search, and it would search through all those documents in that library. So that was one of the things that came to mind in terms of answering that. Other than that, I know for mass users of AI, that the free versions have limitations in terms of how long you can use it and the speed that they provide the answers at. Whereas if you have a paid version, and there's a hierarchy of paid versions getting more and more expensive, you can use it for longer and you get much quicker answers. But I think that's probably for people, maybe a few people in that industry, but maybe more people on the coding side and that sort of thing.
Thanks, Charles. I mean, I've always got the free version, and I've got quite a few AI options that I jump to, because one of the biggest issues is that you're busy working on one and you're constantly doing that, updating and re-questioning and kind of plowing into the nitty-gritty, so to speak, and then it comes up with, thanks, you've exceeded, for further use, please do the upgrade. And there's nothing more frustrating than looking at what the cost is to then have the upgrade. So that's certainly one option. Another thing that I've noticed is that if you upload a document, it might not read the full document because of the limitation of the unpaid version. And that's quite a big concern, because you're uploading a document and you can't be certain where it stopped reading in that document. And obviously that impacts greatly on the outcome of what you're getting. So that's also something, and being something that you're not aware of, it is obviously of great concern. And so guys, just be careful of that. The free version does have its limitations, as mentioned, higher limits on paid AI and some additional features. Wanda, thank you very much for sharing that. So here's another one, which is quite an interesting one from Tumelo. And this is based on what you were saying, Charles, with regards to AI being a language model. And I must admit that was exciting, the way you just spoke to the computer and it just wrote it all down and then answered the question. It kind of makes me think, question why I have a keyboard in front of me. But anyway, he says there, since AI is a language model, how accurate is it with, firstly, slang, and second, with accent? Interesting to hear your answer to that one.
I'm going to attempt an answer, but I think that if you don't put in your prompts how formal you want the response to be, it'll pick up what tone your answer should be from your from the language that you use. So if you're starting your prompt like that says like, "Hey dude, I'm on the beach and I want to know like what's the best way to access my surfboard," then your response is going to be like, "For sure, man. There's these 3 waxes available, blah blah blah." So it picks up from your tone what sort of tone you should say, and obviously you can change it by what wording you use in your prompts. But yeah, it will pick up the slang, and it will also pick up the tone from that.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that. So yes, I guess, especially in an environment where slang is quite apt and certainly quite large, I guess it's going to be interesting to see how it works on that. Okay, so just moving on, another question here from Terry. As consultants with a built and natural environment, how do we circumvent the negative impact of AI use on the environment? I don't know if you need more to that, or whether you're happy to answer it based on what's there.
I think that's a worldwide challenge, and I didn't include the environmental impacts of using AI in my presentation, because I was trying to keep a positive light. But there is an environmental impact. AI uses it crunches a lot of data, and for that it needs a lot of power. and anything that uses power, has an impact on the environment. So as part of, I think, the greater question, because I think as AI develops, we're not going to use it less to ensure sustainable outcomes. We're going to use it more, and I think the question then becomes, okay, so now how do we manage the impact we're having with the power requirements on the environment? And unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but I think we need to be aware that every time we're using AI, we are impacting the environment. It's the same, as leaving lights on, leaving adapters plugged in. We really need to work on the sustainability side of it, but unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that. But it is a problem, and hopefully AI can assist us in solving it.
With regards to opening the floor to Sam, is there anything you would like to comment on that particular question? Sam, you are muted.
Sorry. Not on that. I think Charles quite correct. I think, with any new development, there's going to be some impact. It's going to be very difficult to sort of come up with solutions that don't have any impact at all on the environment. But I think it's a valid concern. It's something that we do have to consider, given the amount of users that are making use of those platforms. I mean, those numbers are in the billions in some countries. I don't think the use of search engines is a new thing. I think this has been around for decades. It's just on a different level now and on a different platform. So I don't have anything to add there.
I think it goes back down to what we've been saying all along. At the end of the day, we can use AI to enhance our work, but we can't necessarily take away the person behind it that is then vetting the output, and making sure that we're not using AI that's going to be kind of detrimental to what it is that we're doing. All right, so here's another comment. This was placed in the questions and answers, and I'm going to read it, and we may have to get Alan to just give us a bit more on this one. It says, please comment with respect to a profile training AI, and then after, say, about 2 months, said AI package, it fails to return what it has been trained on. Then on prompting again as to why, the explanation is data decay. Charles, I'm going to throw that one at you to start with and see how you go. I don't know if you need more from Alan.
No, unless he wants to add. But my understanding, I have had issues with this where you initially load a document, and then you use AI to refer to that document, and it keeps going back, and then time passes, and then you start to see sort of weird things come in the responses, and then you realize that could be as a result of data decay. So I guess we need to go back to the point of reloading the data if we have it available, and then seeing if it's better from there. I'm not sure on another solution, and if the data isn't available, I guess we might have to try and get more data. But the question in my mind then becomes, at what point is the decay significant to a point where we can't use it anymore? And then, how do we know where that point is? So data decay is probably an up and coming research field. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe this is what we need to submit to that gentleman that you spoke about. What's it, Rosman, or I can't remember his surname.
Professor Rosman,
maybe we can put his $1 million to give it on data decay. That could be where we need to head with that. Okay, so here's another question. With the continuous improvement of image generation, manipulation by AI, how can we verify an image sent, e.g. a corrected construction defect is real and not doctored? Sure.
Yeah, Shane. I think that goes back to Vickers Smith's comments about the AI watermark. And perhaps maybe 100%. That's where it's come from.
Yeah. And I think the scary part is it's so difficult to kind of identify, has something been kind of manipulated by AI or isn't it? sometimes there's always the one little thing that sticks out. Like, for example, there was one the other day where an eagle came down and picked up a little lion cub while the mother was chasing after the eagle, and prompted to jump probably 30 stories to kind of grab the eagle and bring down her cub, making it completely unrealistic. But it's a difficult one. There was discussion around the table as to whether a lion could actually jump so high. So it does create this concern of, amongst people, isn't it true, based on their knowledge and probably their limitations on what a lion is capable of doing. So I guess all of that is very much a concern about something, whether it's doctored or not. But I agree, certainly the watermark will go a long way to help us in that, and certainly something that we can research further. Here's Vickers has come back again, and he says here, is AI a good investment? And I think that's a good way to possibly close the questions. Is AI a good investment? Charles?
The way I interpret that is like, should I go out and buy NVIDIA shares? There's different thoughts here again. Some people just think this is a big bubble, right? Like everyone thought blockchain was going to revolutionize banking. And I think it has had an impact, but probably less so than we were all expecting. And, I know AI is so topical and it's just on everyone's mind. But the IT bubble, 2000, 2001, everyone just thought those IT companies were going to go up. And yeah, I would say just be cautious. Let's take the long view. Yeah.
But I think, Charles, from what's been said already, obviously the paid version, investing in a paid version is certainly more beneficial than running the free versions, based on the limitations and the unknown as to what's going on in the background. And so certainly from that perspective, I would be inclined to say, if you're going to go AI, then look at investing in a package and get the proper version and not just the free version, because of the concerns that are attached to it. Yeah.
If I can just comment on that, just one way of thinking about it. The enterprise license, I think, is about $35 a user. And that comes out to about 600-700 Rand, depending on the exchange rate. So if a junior engineer using a license just saves 1 or 2 hours a day a month, that's paid off your license, and you've saved yourself all that risk. You've opened up all the additional functionality, and when you look at it from that point of view, it's a no-brainer. But don't buy used licenses and then your staff don't use them. To me, that's just a waste. So if you get it, you've got to use it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charles. I think just before I do my closing statement, any closing remarks from you, Charles?
I guess it would just be to just be careful on using the free versions. That to me is probably the biggest risk after not reviewing the work. So just be careful there. Yeah.
Thanks. And to you, Sam, any closing remarks on your side?
I think for me, the biggest issue that we will encounter sort of from a risk management and from a legal perspective is going to be, if something goes wrong, how are we going to establish what went wrong and what is the cause of what went wrong? And technically whose fault it is that it went wrong. Was it the machine's mistake, or was it the engineer who input the incorrect data in, or insufficient data in, or is it a case of the correct data was given out, but what was done with that wasn't sufficient or correct? The establishment of that could become very gray when you're relying heavily on AI. So maybe to close, the message from me is, don't blanketly rely on, what's coming out of that machine. Make sure that you are vetting that as you would vet whether you use that or not. I would even go so far as to say go a step further and put more effort into vetting that, because you're relying on something, and you don't know where that's pulling, where the sources of that is coming from. Is it considering the position in the local context? Are we looking at all the rules and regulations that govern us in this country? Is it specific to the exact type of design that I'm doing? There's so many auxiliary things that might not be taking into account. So just being very careful around that. And I don't think our message is don't use AI. I think it's a great tool that can be used to improve your efficacy, but be careful and make sure that you are doing those checks and balances and vetting.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam. Thanks, Charles, for a very insightful presentation. And there are certainly a lot of people that are thanking you for what you've done and the time and effort that you put into preparing it. So thank you very much. And I think just closing, colleagues and friends of CESA, we have reached the end of today's webinar, and I'd like to take this opportunity to once again thank the panelists for giving up their time and for sharing their knowledge and thoughts with us, as well as to our delegates for supporting CESA and attending our webinar. I would kindly like to request delegates to complete the satisfaction survey that will pop up on your screen at the end of this webinar. Please note that this webinar has CPD points attached to it. So for those of you that are registered with CESA, you can claim 0.15 CPD points for attending this webinar as per the webinar attendance list. There are a couple of you have asked, will this be available, this webinar? And yes, it will be. You can see it on CETV, which is our CESA TV on our YouTube channel. Please give us a bit of time just to do a bit of editing and make sure that it's in a presentable format, and so that will be available, but we will send out an email when it is to all those that have attended. And so again, from our side, thank you very much for attending and for participating. Have a lovely remainder of your Thursday and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much. All the best. Cheers.